Hey everyone, hi, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about 3 nonfiction books that I read relatively recently and giving you some thoughts on these books. They're very different in nature, however all 3 of them have this theme of art threaded through as that connects these 3 books. So, and actually these books would be perfect for People April, which is an event that is hosted by Elisabeth at Bookins and Books. Great channel. And another fantastic channel, which is Roz at Scalladandling about the books. And People April celebrates reading biographies, reading about people, real people in April, as it might suggest. If you are new to my channel and you are liking the vibe, know that my name is Shelly and this is all about reading here. Without any further rambling on, let's go ahead and get into the meat of this video. This video is getting kicked off with The Art Thief by Michael Finkel. Now, Finkel, this is my second read by Finkel. The first one, I have notes like way yonder over there, was The Stranger in the Woods, which is about a man who chose to be a hermit and lived out in this remote area. He had access to town, but he stayed away from town in order to preserve his hermitage, I suppose. And he actually thieved from the townsfolk in order to sustain his lifestyle. I think I was somewhat enthralled by the book at the time. And it's going to connect to The Art Thief. Stranger in the Woods, I was enthralled by because it was somebody who truly chose to be in isolation and the way he maneuvered that. But also there was this strange sense of awe from Finkel, even though towards this hermit. Even though the hermit was a thief, like that is how the hermit lived his life, was able to even live his life, was through thieving. So I felt like it was a little sympathetic. Now that I've thought about it for years, the book, it's a little bit sympathetic towards the side of the person who was doing the wrongdoing, even though what he did was extraordinary because he didn't speak to people for like 2 decades, something like that. So I have a similar critique for The Art Thief. So The Art Thief is following this man. I have to look up his name because I forgot. Our thief in question, the art thief, is Stefan. And he starts at a rather young age. He starts to steal items that he is drawn to, that he's like electrified by. He starts to steal from museums. He steals paintings and sculptures and knickknacks, and it's not necessarily just about the thieving itself. He does have a perspective and a taste in art, and he would take these items, and he lived in his mother's attic, I believe, or basement. I can't remember now. Oh my gosh, the details. The details are slipping from me. It was a short little book, and he lives with his mother. I believe it was in the attic, and with his girlfriend. His girlfriend was in on all these heists, all these thefts, and he would just bask in the beauty of the art. So what Finkel does is that he talks about the origins of Stefan's thieving, where it maybe came from. There was some analysis on, why he did it. That's always an interesting thing. How he got caught, what happened to the art. It was good, but the reason why I mentioned The Stranger in the Woods and with The Art Thief, I do think that in some ways Finkel is a little enamored with his own subject, that he's not tough enough on his own subject. There is, the softness around the edges. Not that, I don't know, the art thief, what he did was, he stole from the public. He stole from he stole the joy of the item that could be viewed by many. And it was selfish. It was, he kept it for himself. And there were, some of the art had some tragic endings. So I don't know. it's like I'm really glad that I know about this thief, but in some ways I feel like I wish there was a little more meat on the bones, or yeah, maybe that's what I wanted because it was so short. So I wanted a little more to grab onto. I wanted maybe a little more analysis, a little more about the history. I think maybe I would have liked it better if it was like the history of art thieving. But I mean, it was super quick and it was really engaging, and it was incredibly fascinating to think about somebody who does this thing that seems so, in some ways, unimaginable to people, of stealing art and then keeping it for yourself for selfish reasons. So in a lot of ways, I liked it, but I didn't love it. And I think maybe it's just that Finkel is not the author for me. So thinking about art and art and spending the night with art, like looking at art and basking in art, really that's what it is. It is Like a Sky Inside, and this is by Jakuta, Alikavazovic. This was originally written in French. Fern Books sent me this, and it was the winner of a French prize. It was translated by Daniel Levin Becker, and this was, I think, longlisted and perhaps even shortlisted by the Republic of Consciousness Prize, which is a prize that elevates small presses. And Fern Books is indeed an incredibly tiny little press. And when I was reading this, I thought this was fiction. For whatever reason, I thought this was a little fiction book. And then after I read it, I was like, that really read like in either an autofiction book or a memoir. And then I did some digging, and this indeed was a memoir. Now, Fern Books probably told me exactly what this book was. Fern Press, you know. Fern Books. The press is called Fern Books. They probably gave me the lowdown on what this book is and all of the details about the book. However, I probably forgot, and so when I picked it up, I picked it up and I didn't really know what was going down. So this is about a woman, and it's actually about Jakuta, right? Jakuta? I'm not sure. How she gets the opportunity to stay the night in the Louvre. And so she gets to spend the night with art, and she gets this special approval. And it's really about that experience overnight. And while she's there, she's remembering her father who loved art. And he would ask her these little sneaky, cheeky questions like, how would you go about stealing the Mona Lisa, as a thought experiment? And also just her father's connection with art and her father's connection to his country. So it's this lovely sort of in and out of the present in which she's staying overnight in this incredible museum. And thinking again about her childhood and the connection she has with her father. So, and then it was so funny because at the heart of it, the question of how would you go about stealing the Mona Lisa, that ends up sort of echoing in the book. And so it was funny because as I was reading this, I was also reading The Art Thief, and I was like, well, Stefan knows exactly how he would go about stealing the Mona Lisa, probably because he's even come up with a plan for it. So it was funny because I felt like the two books were definitely talking to one another, and we're talking about this incredibly fine art, elevated art, known art, in both books. And so this ended up being it was lovely, and I liked it more knowing that it was a memoir. Because as a fiction book, it would have been incredibly quiet. As a memoir, it makes sense. Sharing this experience of staying overnight in this magical, incredible, wonderful place. And what would you do? And how would you spend your time? And it was interesting walking in the footsteps of someone else who actually did that. So this was just a lovely little book. Speaking of lovely little books that uses art definitely in a different way, and it was Penguin the Magpie, the odd little bird who saved a family. And this is by Cameron Bloom and Bradley Trevor Greive. Now, this is a book that has photographs and text, but it's mostly photographs. So there's Penguin right here. They named this magpie Penguin because it was colored, I believe. The coloring looked a lot like a penguin. So you have this. So there is, in a sense, an essay. Like the introduction is an essay of the backstory of this family. And what happened? Yeah, Cameron and his wife Sam. So they were adventurers, incredibly athletic, and had children. And in a moment, in a moment's time, Sam, the wife, has this injury, this accident that really alters her entire life. It is not just a mild accident, it is one that is life-shifting, life-altering. And as she is processing her new body and the changes in her life, they adopt a little bird. And this bird just allows them, gives them joy, gives them peace, gives them something to look forward to each day. And Sam, this wonderful, lovely wife, who is now dealing with a brand new life, really bonds with this bird. And and really helps, lift her up out of this dark hole of essentially depression that she's going through, trying to process all of these changes in her life. And so it was really, really sweet. I had been meaning to read this. Gloria Z. Thompson told me about this book on her channel. She didn't tell me personally, but she told me about it on her channel. Read it. She loved it. I think Gloria liked it better than I did, but I did find it very sweet. And one of those books that I'm glad that I've read. And I do think that the format of telling the story in photographs and text was really effective. So I believe Cameron is the photographer, and so he's the one that took all the photos of the bird and the bird interacting with the children and his wife, and so it's neat to see his perspective on his family through the lens of a camera. I know that I enjoy the same benefits because my husband is a photographer, and so he often takes these really incredible in-between moments of me and the kids and our pup Harry. And so it was neat to see another family, their moments of candor and their moments of realness come through the lens, that it feels like Cameron must have taken 1,001 pictures of his family and just put the best 40 in this book. Or the ones that said something about their life, which was cool, which was sweet. And so anyways, it was a very, very sweet book, and I'm glad to have read it. So, that's it. Those are my 3 nonfiction books that I've read recently. Here's what I find fascinating. I love nonfiction. And last year I did not read as much as I would have liked. So this year I'm reading more, and I'm taking things off the list that I had been meaning to read, or I'm trying to be a little more open to the opportunity of reading nonfiction. The 3 books that I read, I liked, but none of them are going to make the best books of the year. So I feel like I'm not reading the most amazing nonfiction of my entire life, but I'm glad that I'm getting back into the rhythm of it. And I do think upcoming I will read one of the best nonfiction books of my life. It's coming. It's just not there yet. So yeah, I hope that made sense. Anyways, I'm gonna go. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here and spending this time with me. Let me know some of the nonfiction books you've read recently. Would love to hear what you've been picking up. And I hope to see you all in my next one. Bye.